I used to sing around my work and playing with my babies. Well, I don't sing anymore, and my husband doesn't laugh as he used to. I'm 24 years old, and I suppose I'll live a long time, but I don't see how I can ever be happy again.
Industrialization in the late 19th and early 20th century opened countless job opportunities for even the most unskilled and uneducated laborers. As a result, from 1880 to 1920, over 20 million immigrants, mainly from Southern and Eastern Europe, arrived in America in search of economic opportunity. A number of these European immigrants settled in Colorado to find a job in the growing coal industry. Although these miners were able to secure a stable job, they worked under dangerous conditions for low wages. Cave-ins were common, and methane gas released by the mining of coal often caught on fire, resulting in devastating mine explosions.
They say that when the miners went to work, they never could say for sure they would come back out of the mine.
Mine companies rarely took responsibility for the death of their workers, claiming that their deaths were due to the workers' own negligence. Should the miners be able to survive these harsh conditions, they were rewarded with low wages, as miners were paid by the amount of coal produced, not by the hour. Miners were not paid for dead work, the work needed in order to ensure a safe mining environment. It was thus possible for a miner to work days without pay. Home life for miners was not an improvement. Miners returned home to a company house located in company towns with company stores, schools, and hospitals. Miners were forced to pay the company's inflated prices and forbidden to leave the town. This poor treatment of miners soon led to the organization of unions under the United Mine Workers of America, which would aid the miners in organizing a strike, causing conflict between them and their employers. The Ludlow Massacre of 1914 was a violent encounter between striking miners fighting for their safety and rights and guards employed by Colorado Fuel and Iron, a major coal production company in Colorado. This tragedy drew the nation's attention to coal mines and the workers in them, resulting in a movement for massive improvements upon working conditions. In 1910, Colorado Fuel and Iron was passed to John D. Rockefeller Jr. as a gift from his father. CF&I was a major company in the production of coal in Colorado, and at one time it produced 75% of Colorado's coal. Rockefeller, however, managed the company from New York. His understanding of worker conditions was based solely off of reports given by company managers. He believed that workers were treated well and were content with their situations, but on the contrary, workers were beginning to grow unhappy. On September 17, 1913, the United Mine Workers put forth a list of 7 demands, including a 10% pay raise and stricter enforcement of Colorado mining laws. They threatened to go on strike if these demands were not met. The demands were rejected by company representatives, and 1 week later, 12,000 miners went on strike. The strikers were soon evicted from their houses and moved into tent colonies sponsored by the United Mine Workers. The largest and most important colony was Ludlow, which held around 1,200 miners and their families. The Ludlow Colony was home to a diverse group of immigrants led by Crete-born Louis Tikas.
And so the miners themselves, they were trying to win the strike to go back to work. They never struck to destroy the mines, or they never struck to put the operator out of business. They wanted to strike to better themselves.
In response to the striking miners, Colorado Fuel and Iron hired the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency to protect working miners and break the strike. However, the strike-breaking tactics used by Baldwin Felts agents were oftentimes inhumane and cruel. One of the most infamous was the Death Special, an armored car that would spray the colonies with machine gun fire. As agents tried to break the strike, tensions between the strikers and agents rose as violent murders and beatings were committed by both sides. 1 month later, Colorado Governor Elias M. Ammons called in the National Guard to maintain peace. However, the National Guard soon became a strike-breaking force used to protect company interests because many guards were also being paid by the company. Violence escalated on the morning of April 20th, 1914. Louis Tikas had met with local militia regarding a man who was claimed to be held in the tent colony against his will. Tikas was hit across the face with a rifle butt and shot in the back. He died on the spot, becoming the first casualty of the Ludlow Massacre. Shortly after, gunfire broke out in the colony. It is unsure which side fired first. Women and children took cover in pits dug underneath the tents, while armed miners hid in prepared foxholes, trying to draw fire away from the colony. Militiamen mounted a machine gun on a nearby hill, spraying the miners and the tent colony with fire. The shooting continued for 14 hours. In the evening, after the shooting had stopped, militiamen set fire to the colony and began to loot the tents. A group of 11 children and 4 women had hidden under a tent during the shooting. All but 2 women, Mary Petrucci and Alcarita Pedregon, suffocated while the tent caught on fire. 2 months before the Ludlow Massacre, the eldest of Mary Petrucci's 4 children, Bernard, had fallen ill and died because mine company men would not allow Mary to take him to a doctor in nearby Trinidad. Mary lost her 3 other children during the Ludlow Massacre.
I think my grandmother, my grandparents probably had a difficult time trying to get over the grief of losing a child a month and a half before Ludlow and then losing 3 additional children in the massacre. So I think it must have been very challenging for them to lose their entire family in the space of a month and a half.
At the end of the day, 25 people had died. This tragedy drew the nation's attention to coal mines. People were horrified, especially by the fact that the victims included women and children. Although the goals of the strikers were not achieved, the Ludlow Massacre took an important role in the bettering of mine conditions.
It stirred up a lot of awareness about the conditions of the miners because, the things that the union was asking for were, just basic health care, decent wages, not working overtime, more safety in the mines and things like that.
In 1915, the U.S. Commission on Industrial Relations, led by Chairman Frank Walsh, investigated the Ludlow Massacre. For days, the commission took testimonies from industrial owners and workers from around the country, including John D. Rockefeller Jr., who was singled out and vigorously questioned by Walsh. The investigation brought a flood of public hostility towards the Rockefeller family. As a desperate attempt to fix his public image, Rockefeller Jr. visited the Colorado mines and hired labor conciliator William Lyon Mackenzie King to assist with the writing of the Colorado Industrial Plan. Rockefeller's plan established company unions, worker organizations created by the company. Company unions were not independent trade unions and were soon outlawed by the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. However, the establishment of these unions marked a turn in worker-employer relations as companies began to recognize worker unions. The Ludlow Massacre also marked the beginning of an era of reform for workplace conditions. After the Ludlow Massacre, a series of bills improving workers' conditions were passed, including laws that not only regulated mine conditions, but also privileges that modern workers have today, such as an 8-hour workday and overtime pay. One of the most important acts was the National Labor Relations Act, also known as the Wagner Act, which allowed workers to form trade unions, engage in collective bargaining, and if necessary, take collective action, including strike. The strikers at Ludlow did not achieve what they had wanted, but instead set in motion a chain of events that would increase the safety of mines, as well as dramatically improve workers' conditions across the country. Coal mining still remains a dangerous profession, but due to safety laws such as the Federal Coal Mine Safety Act of 1952 and Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969, coal mine fatalities began declining rapidly near the end of the 20th century. If it had not been for the miners at Ludlow and their list of demands, American workers would not have the rights that they enjoy today.
I've always said that, I stand on their shoulders for all of the great things that they did for me personally being a coal miner. But anybody that works in this country should be grateful for them too, because of the sacrifices they made.
In 1918, the United Mine Workers of America erected a monument near the site of the tent colony, remembering the tragedy of the Ludlow Massacre, the sacrifices made by striking miners, and the wave of improvement upon workplace conditions that it brought forth.